Welcome into, by my count, episode 10 of What the Puck here on the TKDS Sports Network. I'm your host, Caleb Spinner, and I decided to pull out a sweater I don't wear often. I don't think I've ever worn it on the show, but I call it my Freddy Krueger sweatshirt. Now, I think, and it's been a long time since I've seen the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but I think Freddy's is red and black. This is red and navy, so it's not quite, but it certainly could get you through if you were going to a Halloween party and you had nothing else to do. So, I think we're starting off fresh on the other side of the All-Star break now with a new sweater that's never before been seen on this show. So, do with that information what you will. Probably going to be another shorter show today as we are getting back into the swing of things from the All-Star break. Nobody's going to be playing until later this week, whether you look at the AHL, the ECHL, or the NHL. College, of course, only plays on the weekends, so we'll talk about what Ohio State men's and women's hockey did over the day. Actually, let me put up the outline so you can see what I'm talking about here. We'll talk about Ohio State men's hockey getting swept by Michigan. We'll talk about women's hockey continuing their hot streak and getting another pair of wins. And then first we will open up with a conversation on the NHL All-Star Weekend. I kept teasing that I was going to tell you all why I liked the NHL All-Star Game so much and All-Star Weekend for the NHL more than any of the other professional leagues. And I don't think I ever did that. So that's going to be one of the things we talk about today. Getting started right off here, I think this year was very entertaining. I liked the All-Star Draft because I don't think I'm going to get a lot of backlash for saying that some of the divisions are more loaded with talent than the others. It's the same thing in football when you have, teams like the AFC North having maybe not as many star players as the AFC West. I'm not actually saying that. I'm just I'm piecing this together in my head. The Pacific, the Metro, they're very different in terms of what players they bring to the ice, the quality of their all-stars, and that's fine. Every team, I think, in the NHL you look at has more or less one or two really good stars to the name, like objective, fantastic players within the top within the top like 50 or so of the league. I think the talent is dispersed pretty well over the NHL. But when you allow players the opportunity to play with guys they've never played with before or reunite from past teams, as you see ever so often in these all-star drafts, I think that adds another layer of, I'll say, of calm, of, hey, we're just here to have fun to this weekend, because in the long and short of things, the All-Star Weekend is meant to be a break for the players. It's meant to be a fun weekend to get away from the season for these players. And I think diverting it back to the days of all of us at the playground picking teams for our two-hand touch team at recess, that adds another level to this. Is for entertainment of the fans, of course, and for the honor of whichever city is hosting it. But it's also for us, and it's also to show that what we do, though it may come with a championship, though it may be a business, though it may be a multi-million-dollar industry, it is a game. And this All-Star Weekend allows us to get back to that game. The fact that hockey is a game that is played by millions, if not billions, of people around the world. And it allows us to honor that. Now, in terms of why I think it's better than the rest of the leagues, the NBA All-Star Game has always been a bit of a joke. Nobody plays defense. It turns into an offensive showcase. It's basically a dunk contest featuring the players that don't want to be in the dunk contest. LeBron has said he doesn't want to be in the dunk contest for years, and then always is seen high flying in the All-Star Game, throwing down dunks that would be worthy of competition. There's no defense. It's not entertaining just because it is essentially running down the floor uncontested, throwing down a dunk, and then the other team does the same. And we do that for 4 quarters. What makes the NHL different is that, sure, the pace might not be as fast. You're not getting as quick of rushes up the ice when a team breaks out. But when you have the goaltenders in there, their job is to limit scoring chances. So the goalies, because they're all-stars, are doing the job at which they're paid to do, and they're keeping pucks out of the net. So you get, Jake Ottinger deflecting shots from Travis Konechny or from Cale Makar. That still is something you'd see when the Stars play the Philadelphia Flyers or the Colorado Avalanche. But now you get Ottinger will maybe deflect one from Konechny, and then it's picked up on the other side by, Mitch Marner. And that you don't see in a traditional game. So you get the best goaltenders in net from everywhere in the league playing against the best goal scorers and the best defensemen in the league. And it limits the amount of offense you have. Like, it'd be different if they were just playing in front of an empty net. But because you have goaltenders doing what they're meant to do, stopping pucks from going into the net. Now, are they laying out? It's more entertaining. Are they laying out? Are they making these back-breaking saves that they would in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final? No. They're allowing some through. They're not, we're going to talk about them in a minute, but Boone Jenner's first goal on Team McDavid was to a wide open net because I forget who the team, who would have been? Who was McRae's group? Was that Team McKinnon? Team McKinnon, I forget who their goaltender was. It might have been, no, it wasn't Hellebuck. Team McKinnon's goaltender could have slid over in a game. Didn't have to make that move. Boone just shot it on a wide open net. But still, you get, again, that playground atmosphere of we drafted teams ourselves. And you get this is still going to be, you're still going to have to try to score. Even if it's not the quick rushes and the checks into the glass that we all love about the game of hockey. Nobody's going to drop gloves with each other in this all-star game. It still is really entertaining, I think. And then you get the skills competition, which was great. You get the combined skills competition, which I think is even better. Limits the people you get to take to the all-star game because people used to go just for one event or a few events, but at least, you look back at the Vegas games. Johnny Gaudreau went for the skills competition and for the All-Star game, but I think there's another player I'm blanking on, but I thought somebody else from the Blue Jackets went a few years ago just to compete in one of the skills competitions and not the actual game. I'm blanking on it. Help me out in the comments here if you don't mind. But I do like it. I think it adds another level of competition, and it really shows you at the end of the day, theoretically, who the best player is because they won the one-on-one challenge, or they at least did well enough to move on in the one-on-one challenge. They did well enough to move on in the obstacle course. They did well enough in all of these areas to where you can say this is one of, if not the best, passer, shooter, skater, scorer, whatever, in the league. And I think that's a cool thing, and adding the cash prizes for the goaltenders in the one-on-one shootout, make sure they're doing, they at least have an added incentive for that. Putting the money on the line that's cap-free is something that also adds to the fun of it, just to make sure that if players don't care about the award, they're at least doing it for something. It was a really fun weekend, and I enjoyed watching it. Now, and Boone, of course, getting 2 goals in his game and making it just short of the final there it had to be really good for him. This is a guy who's been in the league for upwards of 10 years. I think the right number is 11, but he's been in the league for a long time, and this being his first All-Star game and him getting to score in such a big event was great for him. I know it's going to be something that really he probably won't ever forget, at least not for several years down the road. Now, because I love scrolling social media is hilarious, by the way. I think everybody knows this. The big thing I saw from the NHL All-Star Game is Tate McRae. Either fans were saying, who the hell is this? Or what is she doing here? Cole Sillinger, backstory for Blue Jackets forward, used to date Tate McRae. They broke up. So there's some history of her dating an NHL player who wasn't at the All-Star Game, mind you. But a lot of people, when she was announced, myself included, felt bad for Cole. Did the NHL bring her in just to have her like play in front of these NHL players? And did they mean it as any animosity towards Cole? Got to imagine no. But here's what you're doing when you bring in Tate McRae or even Taylor Swift. I'm going to catch flack for defending Taylor Swift's involvement in the NFL here. The main goal of the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, and the NHL, these organizations that have been around for a long, long time, is to make sure that you are able to continue for a long, long time. The main way you do that is you get young viewers to buy in now and become lifelong fans. A lot of, let's just take the MLB for instance, when they were getting ready for the Cleveland All-Star Game, I believe in 2018, I think that was. Might have been more recent than that, but I think it was 2018. The big discussion was, how do we make this more kid-friendly? A lot of people who watch baseball are older. They have been following it since the 70s, since the 60s. And that's fine, but let's quote biology here, they're not going to be on the earth forever. So baseball was faced with this dilemma of a lot of our fans are older. They won't be here for long. How do we survive as a league? How do we get this following over this hump that we're going to see in the future? And it might not have been 2018, but the NBA certainly wants to appeal more to young viewers. The NFL, absolutely. They're just about as old as the MLB, if not older. They are also, more of the traditional sense, or their viewers are more of the traditional middle to upper-aged man, sitting on his couch with a beer on a Sunday night. That's more or less their fans. How do you get the young ones to buy in is you start doing young fan appealing things. Like having Taylor Swift at the Kansas City Chiefs game. Do I think there's this back alley conspiracy that the NFL said, hey Travis, we'd really love it if you started dating Taylor. Hey Taylor, we'd love it if you really started dating Travis. And because we need viewers, and they orchestrated this romance? I gotta believe no. I think they are just taking advantage of a really good situation for them. And by me saying taking advantage, I don't think they're taking advantage wrongly. I don't think they're doing anything to bolster this artificially. It just so happens that as long as Taylor Swift is dating Travis Kelce, we are going to show her in broadcast. We are going to make her part of the game whenever she's here, including the Super Bowl. Now, what does this have to do with Tate McRae? Well, it's the same thing. Tate McRae is objectively not as big of a star as Taylor Swift is. Objectively. Could she be? Probably. Sure. I could see it. But is she now? No. But she is very popular with young people, especially young women. Sports has gone through this evolution over the last 20-ish years or so. Maybe even the last 10, it's really spiked. But you see a large jump in female fans who are watching sports. You're getting away from the girls don't like sports stereotype that a lot of us grew up with, myself included. And I think that's awesome, because for guys, what's the main complaint of a guy with a girlfriend? Oh, she won't let me watch sports on Sundays, or she won't, she doesn't understand. I have to teach her the game or whatever. Me personally, I think it's so much more of an attraction here if I get to watch Browns football with my girlfriend or wife, if I get to watch Blue Jackets hockey with my girlfriend or my wife, and I get to talk about it during the game with her. I don't have to explain to her what an offsides is. She knows that. I don't have to explain to her the rules of hockey because she understands it. Now, hockey is a sport that not a lot of people are into when compared to the NBA or the NFL. I get that. But at the very least, if I don't have to, I think it's great, guys, if we don't have to handhold our significant others through this sport that we love so much. So to see, and what's the best way, if young fans, particularly young female fans, are starting to watch your league, how do you keep them around? You bring in stars like Tate McRae, who is really popular, again, with this young demographic. Now, her show is really good. I don't think any of her songs, or at least I didn't going into this weekend. All I knew is, I think actually last year, when, I forget who it was, but somebody was telling me they saw Cole Sillinger and Tate McRae on a date in downtown Columbus. I think my first question was, who's Tate McRae? I didn't know who she was. She could have been a movie star for all I knew. And so her show was good. I think they did a good job of putting it on. It was always very tough to have a singer on the ice as opposed to doing a halftime show concert on a football field, because there's that risk of slipping. I think they did a really good job of using both pieces that elevated her off the sheet and putting her on the floor. I think they did a really good job of the set design there. The players seemed to buy into it. Players are always going to be awkward. You saw it on Team Arnett and Team Hughes and all that. I think there's a part of me that thinks that the interviewing parts during the draft, like with Buchagras and the guy from TSN or Sportsnet, forget which one it was, those are awkward. Players don't like talking. And to interview them in the middle, what's your thought process? He just scores goals. You can't expect them to be writing a novel here. They're not commentators. I think it might be better now you obviously have to have somebody on the ice to, lead players through. Like there was one time where Team Hughes had to draft a goalie and they couldn't, I think it was Team Matthews. Team Matthews had to draft a goaltender, and they couldn't, or they didn't, and so the rule had to be explained to them. I think there's that need for an MC, but I don't know if you're. I think you might be better with broadcasters in the box commentating as they go along, and an MC kind of walking the players through it, rather than trying to interview, and maybe interview them after. When they've had a chance to go through and ask them what brought each of these players to their teams. But getting back to Tate McRae, I think she did a really good job of, when she was drafting with the team, sharing the responsibility with Makar and McKinnon to, in terms of making picks with them and at least knowing something about Travis Konechny when she made that pick. She could be the Taylor Swift of hockey. She could be. And I would welcome them bringing in her again, and stars and other stars like her, to become a better part of the NHL as they try to build this younger audience. So All-Star Weekend was great in my view. There are some things I would change, but a majority of it was pretty fantastic. Coming up next, we'll switch gears and we'll talk about Ohio State men's hockey. They dropped both games of their weekend series to Michigan. We'll talk about what all of that means next here on the TKDS Sports Network. Welcome back here to What the Puck on the TKDS Sports Network. I'm your host, Caleb Spinner. Once again, if you get tired of that loop advertisement there, you can change it. Get us in touch with your company or business if you would like to sponsor not only this show, but the packages we have here at the TKDS Sports Network cover our live games as well, too. We're looking to add some companies for a for a 12-month contract too, so you are in on all of our seasons as we continue to broadcast sports, as that ad says, from all over the country. It would really, if I had a company, I'd sponsor it, because you get advertising capabilities in everywhere in Ohio and also the surrounding area. Just sounds like a win-win to me. Now switching over to, not speaking of wins, Ohio State men's hockey. 9-15-4 overall, 1-15-2 in conference play. Dropped 2 games to Michigan. First game, pretty close, 4-2. Second game, not close, 4-1. Now, what's the difference between close and not close? 4-2, 4-1. The only difference there, Caleb, is that Ohio State didn't score 2 goals in the second one. Yeah, you would be right. But in terms of the eye test, the second one was over before it started. And you look at that record and you think, wow, Ohio State is a really bad team. Not entirely true. They have, first off, I like this goaltender rotation. Turnus, Eberle, and Herbst are goaltenders you can win with. Absolutely. I don't think changes need to be made there. I don't think there's a desperate need to bring in somebody in the offseason, recruit or transfer. The defense, more often than not, is pretty good. But the real issue, I think, is with the forwards, and they tie to the defense. The offense is not here for Ohio State. I mean, you even look back to last year. They were a goal-scoring team last season and then just dropped off. They didn't lose enough talent in the NHL draft to justify their drop in scoring like this. At least I don't think. So then what's the issue? The issue is they don't have complementary hockey. Meaning the defense can't win games on their own and the offense can't win games on their own. You get contests that start off with Ohio State limiting opposing chances. Sometimes Ohio State will enter the first intermission leading on the shot chart. But the offense is not able to put any of those past. They're, bad shots, great saves, rushed chances, one shot in and either the puck is frozen or the puck is cleared. You don't get those sustained offensive chances. And then you get days where, hypothetically, this isn't true, but it feels like Ohio State will score 7 and the opponent will score 8. It always feels like on the best days for Ohio State offensively, the defense basically takes a day off. Do I think they're actually slacking? No. But for the meaning here, taking a day off. Offense can't win games without the defense and vice versa. If you're going to be scoring goals, you need to limit your opponent from scoring goals. If you're not scoring goals, you need to keep your opponent from scoring goals. Basic stuff, right? I don't think I'm saying anything too controversial with this. But what happens is the offense will have great games and the defense will have great games, but they're not on the same night. And that's what you see with Michigan. 3 goals, all scored by the same guy for Ohio State. You need team scoring here. It can't all be done by one guy. It can't all be done by Max Montes. This freshman who you bring in from the USHL. You've got to have team scoring. And you saw that first period of the second game. I was at the second game in person with some members of the men's glee club going to an alumni event. And that was a brutal first period. You go down 2-0 entering the first intermission on some really good looks for Michigan. They were able to break out into a rush and put them in the back of the net pretty early. The defense had some great looks. The offense had a few good shots. A few shots that I thought could have went in if it weren't for Bashevsky, I think was the goaltender for Michigan, standing on his head on a lot of these chances. But the key with Ohio State is you need to get this team working together. The offense has to work with the defense, and the defense has to work with the offense. The goaltending is fine. You could afford not to touch it. Always, needs to get better. If you've got a losing record, then nothing deserves to be untouched in terms of change. But you could afford letting the goaltenders do what they usually do in terms of practice. Just focusing your attention on getting the offense and the defense to work cohesively, and you'd probably be fine. Now, where on the next bit of the schedule do I think Ohio State could break this 7-game losing streak? Wisconsin's going to be insane. Michigan State's going to be really good. Drew DeRidder's basically turned a goaltender culture to Michigan State. And then Penn State. 6 games left in the regular season, and not one of those series has a game that screams win. But, lucky for Ohio State, you're on a bye this week. You don't play Wisconsin until February 16 and 17, and even then it's on your home sheet. So you've got the week off here. Now's the chance to implement some changes. The chance was actually a long time ago. But you get a prime opportunity without having action this week to implement everything you want for Wisconsin, to implement the structural changes you want in terms of getting players to work with one another. You can come out of this break in at least the right direction of where you want to go next season. Do I think you're going to be a team that all of a sudden sweeps these next 6? Probably not. You can't do that in a week. You can't increase your bench max out by 25 pounds in a week, and you can't go 6-0 in a week after going 1-15 up to this point. Can't be done. Hockey's a game of luck. You could maybe pull out with skill. You could maybe go 4-2 in those 6. That would be a win for me. Even if you can split 3-3, I think that's a solid end of the year for the Buckeyes. Now they will get to play in the Big Ten tournament. Every team gets to play in the Big Ten tournament. They'll have to hit the road for the first time, and I think first time since my freshman year. Yeah, so 3 years ago, just about. That'll hurt. You've hosted Penn State for the last 2 on your home ice. So that won't be as fun. You won't get to have those home playoff series that I know they love. But, I don't frankly think you deserve to host a playoff series at this. So, Ohio State has a lot they need to do on the men's side of things. I think they can make some meaningful changes, especially to this young roster, that if you make the changes now and you carry them through the offseason and the next year, you're going to be a better force. But I don't think it's going to be enough to win. I can't imagine it's going to be enough for you to win the next 6 against 3 of the best opponents you could play in the Big Ten Conference. But you get a week to do it. We'll see what happens when Ohio State hosts Wisconsin in 2 weeks. A team that is hot, however, and wears the Blocko of Ohio State, is the women's team. We'll talk about them. They are on a roll. We'll discuss it next on What the Puck. Welcome back one final time this episode to What the Puck on the TKDS Sports Network. I'm your host, Caleb Spinner. Once again, always looking for sponsorship opportunities for this show and the network as a whole. Visit our website, tkdsports.com, and go to the Contact Us tab for more information on what we offer for you and your company. Women's hockey is incredible, and that's not a novel statement to say, especially over the last 3 years. Ohio State won the national championship 2 years ago. Last year, they were the runner-ups, losing a 1-0 decision to Wisconsin, and now this year, they have spent a majority of the campaign at the number one spot. They add on to their win streak, putting it now to 11 games with a pair of victories against the Bemidji State Beavers, 11-1 in the Friday game, and then Saturday afternoon winning 9-1 for a combined total of 20-2 over those games at the OSU Ice Rink. I've talked about it a few times. I didn't expect this to be anything but a rout. I don't think any realistic hockey fan expected anything but a rout in these games. And frankly, I don't expect it for the next 4 against Minnesota State and St. Thomas. If you're going to get a fight, it's probably going to be out of Minnesota State just because that one's on the road. And I think, frankly, the Mavericks are a better team than St. Thomas is. But when you look at what this team has been able to do in terms of beating the powerhouses in the WCHA, Minnesota Duluth, St. Cloud State. They've beaten Wisconsin too, so we'll throw them in there. You're not going to be threatened by anybody who's not one of those 4 teams. You're just not. You're playing at too high a level for them to do you any damage. As long as you continue to do what you've been doing all year, it's cake. You can walk into the NCAA tournament, at least the Final Four. Wisconsin's going to be the big test, but you've got, 2 weeks until that happens, until you play at Madison, and then that will go into the WCHA quarterfinals and the WCHA tournament on from there. I do think with the rest of these games going forward, you're going to have to score goals. Wisconsin, it's going to be obviously harder because of the caliber of that team. But still, it's not an impossible task. I mean, you've beaten Wisconsin already. Let me scroll up the schedule here. You beat them 3-0 on November 17th and 2-1 in OT on November 18th. Defense is going to be big there, but also goal scoring. You've got to be able to put up a comfortable lead and put Wisconsin on the back foot in terms of they have to catch up to you rather than vice versa. Now, I remember actually we were doing, my roommate and I were doing leg day on Saturday at the RPAC, and there was a guy who was lifting next to us wearing Villanova ice hockey shorts, and they had a number on him, so I immediately think, okay, he was a former player. So I strike up a conversation with him, and long story short, I learned that his daughter goes here, and he's visiting. It's his first time from Manhattan, and the shorts are actually his son's, but he and his son were looking for something to do. They had plans to go to the men's hockey game that night, and they needed something to do. And I said, well, have you ever been to the women's game? And he goes, no, are they any good? I'm like, are they any good? And proceed to rattle off the resume that I opened this show with. Not, tournament, at least runner-ups in the championship, if not the champion, over the last 2 years. Spent a majority of this season as the USCHO's number 1 team in the country. And he said, well, we've been looking for something to bridge the gap between this workout that we're just finishing up at 1 o'clock and this game that we're going to that doesn't drop the puck until 8. Did they end up going? I don't know. I never saw him at the game, unfortunately, to ask him if they ended up going. But I do think it's funny. It's comical how this team continues to blow out opponents and win against the best teams in college hockey, not just in their conference, but in the country. And they still fly under the radar. How that's possible, I'm not entirely certain. But Very winnable games coming up this weekend at Minnesota State. They'll return home for St. Thomas February 16 and 17 when the men's team is hosting Wisconsin. And then the women's team will travel to Wisconsin February 23rd and 24th ahead of the WCHA quarterfinals on March 1st and 2nd. Wow. Yawn. I mean, what more can be said about this team? They're doing just as well at home as they are on the road. Look at this, 13-1 record at home, 11-1 away. And the only reason there's a disparity there is because right now they've played more series at home than away. I fully expect after this trip to Mankato, Minnesota, that's going to be 13-1 away as well. But 24-2 in overall, 92% of your games you've won is incredible. And 21-1 in the conference. This is going to be a team that, frankly, I don't know if we'll talk about them actually anymore until that Wisconsin series, because what more can you say about it? I don't think this is going to be a team that we have meaningful discussions with until they start going into the NCAA tournament. I don't think. Maybe WCHA final? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I haven't had my caffeine yet. But, I mean, there's really, like we said it all. The offense is fantastic. The defense is even better, and the goaltending is superb. This is the best team I've seen in years on the women's side of the bracket. And I think they're just going to continue to keep winning. The schedule is there. The real test won't be for another 2 weeks. We probably won't talk about this team until then. When we get back to our show on Wednesday, we're going to talk a lot of pro hockey. The Blue Jackets get back to action, the Monsters get back to action, and the Toledo Walleye and the Cincinnati Cyclones get back to action. If you didn't fill in the blank there, filled it in for you. So we'll talk a lot of pro hockey. We'll move away from the college game with the men on a bye and the women basically on a bye as well at Minnesota this week. So we'll talk a lot about pro hockey coming up. We'll take a look at what's going to be happening after the All-Star game, what the rest of the seasons look like, how winnable are these games coming up, and what all the rest of the year looks like for those pro teams. Be sure to tune in Wednesday at 10 o'clock for a brand new edition of What the Puck here on the TKDS Sports Network. Until then, I'm your host, Caleb Spinner, saying that's the show. I'm out of here.